Welcome back to Start the Conversation. On our podcast, we talk about the real, the raw, and the remarkable stories of success and recovery. We hear from clinicians, experts in the field. We hear from clients and alumni who are walking through the battle daily. So if you like this topic and this conversation, I ask you to hit that like button, maybe leave a comment, share it with somebody. It really helps us to get the word out to more people. And today on our show, we got a very special guest, Laura, our clinical director.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Laura, what's going on?
A whole lot of recovery,
A
a
whole
lot of
lot of
grace, and a
recovery.
whole lot of mercy.
All right, I've been trying to get you on here for some time now. You always dodge the bullet on me. So, but my boss helped a little bit with getting you on today. He wouldn't quite let it go. So you're here. You just celebrated. Would you tell our listeners what you just celebrated?
19 years in recovery. And it's amazing that number is so big because I remember October the 16th of 2006 as if it were yesterday. Wow. That day, the actions that I took that got me to where I was, and then how God stepped in and said, no, this isn't what we're doing. And I remember the events of that day like it was yesterday.
19 years.
Doesn't seem possible.
That's crazy. 19 years, 2006, you started this journey. Now you're here with Resolutions Healthcare, Hidden Oaks as the clinical director, primary therapist as well.
So
How does that happen?
Well, it's the path that God created. It's the doors that He opened. I was probably, I don't know, well, 8 or 9 years clean. And my daughter, who wasn't speaking to me for several years up to that point, sent me a link to a recovery coach position at a place called Treehouse. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know the first thing about recovery. I don't know any of this. I can't help anybody else. I showed up. It took a while to get coordinated with the folks in Nashville and get onto the campus. But the day I rolled into campus to meet Mo, I rolled in there at about 10:30. I was supposed to meet him at 11, and I got off work that night at 11 o'clock. And there hasn't been a day since that I've gotten out of bed with that drudgery. I don't want to go. Every day it's the drive, and it's if the hell I went through in my addiction, in my years of running from my emotions and drowning it out with drugs and alcohol can help at least one other person, then it was glory to my purpose. That's it. It's all God, period, for my journey.
Amen. Good word. So you met Mo, went to work that day. When she says Mo, she means Morris Extreme Fingers. Goes by a lot of different names. He's our program director with Resolutions Healthcare, and he's part of our family, as we all are. We've been in this field for over a decade together now, and some people longer than that. CEO's been in it multiple decades. We have over 100 years experience with all of our leadership team. So from recovery coach tech to clinical director, why we'll talk a little bit about your past in a minute, about you and substance use, but what gave you the drive, or what gave you the motivation maybe to be a therapist?
That's a good question, and I always have to give it back to God because that's where everything happened. But in my mind, there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way than living day to day, chasing a high, hustling for substances, um, passing out at night, from slamming a handle of whiskey. There had to be a better way than running from existence. And I was sucking air and existing for a long time. That's all I was doing. And that day, October the 16th, it started on October 14th with some actions that I took and pretty much laid down in my kitchen floor begging to die.
Mm.
And I did pass out from what I had ingested. And 2 days later, woke up and I kid you not, there was something burning just right down in the pit of my gut. And I heard it plain as day. Get up, we got work to do. And I was thinking I was still spun off. And I heard it again. Get up, we got work to do.
Were you in the hospital at this point?
No,
Were
I
you
was
at
laying
home?
on the floor of my kitchen. And my best friend was sitting on the couch watching me. And she said, if you stop breathing, I'd call an ambulance, but this was your journey to take. And I heard that plain as day. And then everything had to change. You don't have to change anything except for everything.
Right.
And everything had to change. So my mindset had to change. My behaviors had to change. What I did, who I hung out with, where I went, all of that had to change. And it changed that day.
Yeah.
It was just cut it off and start new. And it was the scariest thing I'd ever done. But it was the most comforting thing. There was something in the back that was just totally comforting about it. And I bebopped along, working. I've always worked. That's one thing about me. I was a functioning addict, alcoholic, whatever you want to label it. And I bebopped along in different jobs and made fun in the job because I'm going to enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But when my daughter sent me that Indeed link for that recovery coach, my resume is a recruiter's dream. I've got experience in just about anything and everything and longevity of experience because I'm old. But I didn't know the first thing about a recovery coach, didn't know the first thing about, inpatient care because I never could afford to go there. And it was a question that Jersey asked me when I was 43 years old. Ooh, I shouldn't have said that.
Oh,
but
how did you say it?
He asked me, what is your passion? I remember standing in the admin office there at Treehouse, and he asked me, what is your passion? And I didn't have an answer. At 43, 44 years old, I couldn't answer that.
Yeah.
And I hem-hawed around with it, stewed on it just about every day. And I don't know, probably 8 or 9 months later, I finally went in with an answer. And it was helping others identify what's going on and why we're running so hard and so fast to get away from whatever we're running to get away from. And 9 times out of 10, it's our emotions, it's our feelings that we can't process. And so started learning the trauma stuff. He was my supervisor. I had gotten a bachelor's degree and expected a pat on the head for going through cancer, divorce, addiction, and still maintain, getting this bachelor's degree. And he looked straight at me and said, go get the alphabet soup. And I said, I don't want the alphabet soup. And he looked at me and said, I didn't ask you any questions. Okay. That was on a Thursday. And by Monday, I was in a master's program. And it's just God kept opening doors and making ways and creating avenues for me to excel and grow and gain ground. And so that's what my passion became, or what it was that I didn't know what it was.
Right. A lot of professionals as yourself they're
Perfect.
you're a professional in the field, no doubt. You couldn't work at the level you work at without being a professional. And a lot of people are scared to talk about their past and talk about what they went through. And I didn't give you no questions before we came on this podcast. We came on just shooting from the hip. And but what I want to know what recovery looked like for you. You said you couldn't afford an inpatient program or anything like that. And, you know, speaking to people, it's kind of like that wasn't even a thing back in the day.
It wasn't.
So kind of give me a little bit of your journey if you'd like.
Well, addiction wasn't it was a thing, but it was a hidden thing. It wasn't as prevalent as it is now. You couldn't run to the, we didn't have script farmers back then where you could go to a doctor and get anything you wanted. Um, but it was still a very real thing. And so for me, there's a lot of things on my timeline that were traumatic events. And like we know, we stopped growing emotionally at the age of our first unresolved event. Well, my first unresolved event was 5 years old. And so anytime I felt taxed, anytime I felt pressured, I would revert back to that emotional belief system of a 5-year-old. And 5-year-olds don't know how to deal with the world. 5-year-olds don't know how to deal with marriage. 5-year-olds don't know how to deal with children, divorce, um, careers, and that's where I was coming from. And so when my divorce happened, um, I'd been a dry drunk for 14 years. I had the hubby, the house, the picket fence, and the 2.3 kids. So I quit using. I was using early adult stuff because that's what you go to college for, is to party.
Mm-hmm.
But when the divorce happened, it was amazing to me how quick. And it was Thursday night, I had to tell my husband I had cancer. He didn't respond according to my expectations. I expected him to be comforting, and that wasn't in his forte. Friday morning, I was back at the dope house. It was instantaneous that I reached back out to that disconnect, because if it was all too overwhelming, I knew where to escape. I knew where the escape button was. And Thursday morning, I told him about it after the doctor called me. Friday morning, I was back at the dope house after 14 years of being a dry drunk. And then the change rocked along for a while, and had that episode of begging to die, wanting to be completely gone and not deal with life. I don't think it was a deal of wanting to die. I just didn't want to live in that situation anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And the change, and hearing it plain as day, get up, we got work to do. Um, my recovery became surrounding myself with people who had done it before me. I was court ordered to go. Guy in the black robe told me that I wasn't going to get high again, and he was right. I tried to play the system for a while, but he was right. And I ended up there was a halfway house in Corsicana that offered meetings, and I wasn't going to go to meetings in my own town because I partied with everybody in my town. I
Right.
didn't want to show up in there.
Yeah.
So I went to Corsicana, and there was a halfway house, and there happened to be a biker club
Hey.
there bringing the meeting that night. And it was a fella that I'd been in the same circles with for decades,
Yeah.
but we'd never really talked or communicated or, anything like that. And I'm gonna cry talking about him. Him and his brothers put their hands on me that night, and they prayed for me. And I got in my truck, and the world was different because I was open to receive it then. I got rid of my pride, my ego. I had no pride and ego left.
Mm-hmm.
I had lost everything, been beaten down to nothing. I had nothing left. And pride and ego weren't going to be able to rebuild anything. So they put their hands on me that night outside that halfway house, and they prayed for me. And yeah, T, you're going to see this. um,
Oh, that's who we're talking about.
yeah, T, he came to
Yeah.
Treehouse several times, and him and Popeye came and talked to the clients.
Yeah.
Because he has a whiz bang of a history himself. But it's that premise of one addict helping another. There's a lot to be learned from books. I will never discount the book learning that I have, because I've gone pretty far in the book learning world.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm probably going to be going on to the PhD level. Not that I need one, I just want one. But it's that experience, being taught by experience. And that's what I hope that I bring, or we bring here at Hidden Oaks, is that experience of living through that hard time, living through that desperation feeling, living through the all too uncomfortable of change. Because change is scary. I wasn't a fan, but it was what was needed if I was going to live a life that was worth living.
Right.
So that's how I did it. I surrounded myself with people that had gone before me and knew what they were doing, and got my hands on every story. It has in the big book, it has all those stories in there. I started there and started reading those, and then I started reaching out for more stories, listening to other people and seeing what troubles they'd gone through, because I like to know what to expect. We all do. We all want to know what's coming next. um, each person's journey is different, but the premise is the same.
Right.
It's change, it's uncomfortable, and it's not easy,
Yeah.
but it's the best thing I could have ever done.
I think that's change and being uncomfortable. I can't say there's one thing that I think keeps people chained in their addiction, but I would say the unwillingness to change and the unwillingness to be uncomfortable is definitely in the top 5 reasons that people come to treatment, leave a couple days later,
Start failing.
because we've been we've been dosing ourselves for so long. Every time we get out of our comfort zone a little bit, it's like, no, let me get high, let me drink so I can revert back into my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then we're trying to help people get out of that hole. We cut that off. And then life is going to be uncomfortable for a period of time.
Yeah.
Recovery is not a comfortable thing at first. It can become comfortable over time as you build and as you grow and as you get some more time under your belt. But the first few weeks, maybe even the first few months, it's an uncomfortable thing. You're not used to living life sober. But I was telling a client this morning, I believe there's three milestones in recovery. 3 months, 6 months, and a year.
Mhm.
I think those are the three big milestones that first year of sobriety. And we were talking about how you just gotta push through. Sometimes, they're not white knuckling it because they're coming to treatment and they're getting the things that they need,
But in a way, they are.
but they have to, in a way, white knuckle through.
The first 3 weeks.
Yes.
Because we've convinced ourselves, and whether it's psychosomatic or not, we've convinced ourselves that we need that substance to feel normal. We need that substance to function.
Right.
We need that substance just to be. And the first 3 weeks, you can, if you want to go on threes, you could add that to it.
Yeah.
The first 3 weeks, that's making that your body understand that you don't need that substance.
Right.
And I was right there with you. I mean, I had friends who were alcoholics, whiskey drinkers, but they kept a beer by their bed. So when they woke up in the middle of the night with the shakes, they'd get that alcohol in there. They needed it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But once you come in and you get over that hump, and we have a huge medical staff here that is all about care, all about comfort, all about helping people get through over that hump.
Right.
And then you go into the 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. But yeah, I think we can add that, because that initial, that's where you lose most of your people, is that initial. They can't get over that first hump
Right.
of thinking, I've got to have this
Yeah.
just to feel human.
Right.
And
But
it's
feeling
such a
human,
misnomer.
is what they're actually feeling. And they don't know. It freaks them out. It scares them. Now I got to deal with my emotions. I got to deal with all this crap that I've been stuffing down and getting away from and not worrying about. But being human is the thing that wants them retract back and be a high zombie walking around.
Escape.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to escape. I am a huge proponent about emotions. You hear me talking about it all the time. I'm a huge Brene Brown follower because she's correctly identifying the emotions. But in digging down in it, the physiological effects that our bodies go through from just the words we use. There's a big difference between feeling stressed and feeling anxious. There's a big difference between um, feeling a little bit angered and pissed off. And as soon as we say certain words, our body kicks into defense mode.
Right.
And that's why I'm such a big proponent of identifying those emotions correctly. So your body has a fighting chance. If we're mislabeling everything, and we want punch words, you've heard me talk about that. We want the words that'll get the biggest response, punch words.
Such as,
If I'm feeling a little bit anxious over something like doing a podcast, and I'm just so overwhelmed, I can't deal with this, automatically my body kicks into defensive mode. And my throat gets tight, my breath gets short. And I know where the escape is if I'm starting to feel that way. Disconnect. Get a bump, get a drink, do something, and I can disconnect from that. If I label it correctly, you know what? I'm a little bit trepidatious, and everybody that watches this that's been a client here will know that's my favorite word. If I'm a little bit trepidatious about doing it, and I acknowledge that, okay, there's a little bit of angst, a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress, a little bit of fear, then my body doesn't automatically kick into a defense mode, and I don't need to escape it.
Yeah.
When I start identifying things correctly, we just talked about it in group yesterday. I don't have the need to escape anymore. I'm not running from anything anymore. So drugs and alcohol don't serve a purpose for me anymore.
right.
And so it irks a whole lot of people in 12-step programs for me to say I'm a recovered addict. Absolutely, I am. I'm not dumb enough to not acknowledge that I'm one bad decision away from a relapse
Right.
in any given moment.
Yeah.
But I am a recovered addict. Those drugs and alcohol were for a purpose. They don't have a purpose in my world anymore. They just don't. So,
Amen. Well, thank you for sharing all that and telling us a little bit about your story. We teach we're big on honesty at our program.
transparency.
Honesty, transparency, being real, being raw. And that goes for us too.
You gotta practice what we preach.
Gotta practice what we preach. You know, I can't, not to say that I'm perfect, but if I'm supposed to be up here being the spiritual leader, then I can't be getting off work and running off, and gotta practice what we preach.
Just as much as I do.
And if people watch this video and they don't see why we call ourselves family, I don't see how they can miss it. You talked about coming on with us at the treehouse, actually coming on before me a few weeks, and then we've all been together the last 10 to 12 years now, and we've all grown, and all of that is thanks to Jersey, because he's always the one sitting there, hey, do this, do that, keep going, get up.
Burr under my saddle.
I want to go back to when you were passed out on the kitchen floor and you heard that voice say, come on, get going.
Get up, we got work to do.
Get up, we got work to do. Who was that voice? What was that voice?
It's God.
It was God.
Plain and simple. God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. And what I couldn't do for myself was get out of my own head and get out of my own way and let him do what he held me since before I was born. And that's not quoting scriptures because I can't tell you where it is, but I knew that. My timeline is pretty eventful,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts from birth. There's a whole lot of stuff going on throughout the years, and he's held me through it all. There's been times sitting in a barn with a 9mm. God was right there. I was listening to Ben Fuller's story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was talking about, the gun hit the ground or whatever. And I was like, dude, I was right there, sitting in my barn, having those same feelings, having those same thoughts. And God was there like, no, that's not what I had planned for you.
Right.
But just the ability to listen. I was raised in the church. I was at church every Sunday went to youth group every Sunday night, was there every Wednesday, went to church camp every summer, but I know I did not have a relationship at all. Church was just something to do on Sunday.
Right.
Because in our church, as great as it was, the children's role was passive.
Yeah.
You know, we hung out in the nursery, we hung out in our Sunday school classes while they had big church. And so that's why now when I got on the core group for the Texas Fellowship of Catholic Churches, and we started going around and starting churches, I made sure that we had in our programming, children are part of the church. Once a month at the church, one of the churches that I started, once a month the kids do the service. The preacher prays us in and he prays us out, but the rest of the service is the kids and they do it. Because if you make a child's role active, that's what their faith is going to be, as active. My faith wasn't active. It was there because my parents were believers and they instilled that in me, but it wasn't active at all.
Right. Yeah.
So I got to those places of desperation. But the human brain, I always say in group, I hate the human brain. Just human emotions, how powerful they are. And we can lock onto an idea and drive that thing straight in the ground thinking it's right.
Yeah.
And usually it's not. If we practice the 24-hour rule, or sometimes the 48 or 72-hour rule, get a thought but don't act on it for a time, a lot of things work themselves out. But once we get human emotion tied into it, we're off and running.
Yeah.
So being able to better identify exactly what we're feeling, processing through it, finding out what our role is in it, what the benefit is from going through that or putting myself through that, and letting it pass. Life has been a lot easier. And I don't know if it's an age thing or an understanding thing. I wish I'd have learned this back in my 20s, for sure. I don't think I would have had such the colorful timeline that I have. But I have the colorful timeline for a reason. It's there for a reason.
You said earlier, books can't teach you everything.
No.
Books are good and they help, and we want to be learning more and more.
Yeah.
But there's some stuff, especially in our field, that book ain't gonna teach you. To be able to connect with somebody on a deeper level and get down on their level and walk through the trenches with them, somebody's got to know how deep that mud is that they're walking through.
Exactly.
And that's where, coming from the bottom and being in the trenches, we have that life experience and we can walk beside them and help them. Now the books, that's just an add-on. That's a great thing to get after the fact.
Sure.
We can't just come in here and be all zeal without knowledge.
Well, and I still research now. I'm never gonna
Yeah.
stop learning.
Exactly.
Because there's always something new that comes across, and I'm not closed-minded that there is one way. There is not one size fits all. What worked for me may not work for you. What works for you may not work for the next fella. But the underlying theme is the same. We have to make a change.
Yeah.
And we ourselves can make that change as comfortable or as uncomfortable as we want to. We have the choice. You can ask all the clients, my biggest word, choice.
Yeah.
It's choice. Once you get past that hump of thinking that you need that substance to function, and you start understanding why you turn to it to start with, then it becomes a choice. And I get to choose every day whether I want to keep growing and learning or I want to crawl back in my hole. And I've just chosen for the last 19 years to keep growing and learning.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you've chosen to keep going and not crawl back in that hole, because I wouldn't have met you. We wouldn't have met you.
I wouldn't have my family that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't trade this band of knuckleheads for nothing.
Yeah. Misfits, bunch of misfits, all of us.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for coming on the pod today, sharing your stories, sharing some insight and motivation. So I hope this helps. I hope this reaches and touches somebody. If it helps just one, it's worth all the work that we put into it.
And
You can see us at resolutionshealthcare.com. You can call us. Our phone number is 469-614-8407. We are always available. Reach out. Don't try to do this on your own. We are here for you. Okay, we'll see you on the next one.
Well, that was all over the board.